Well, hi, all. Welcome. We're glad you joined up with us. We've got some wow, we've got some impressive people on this webinar. I want to welcome you to our first ever Chief Chat. This forum is sponsored by the Chamberlain High School Legacy Alliance because we want to make the community at large aware of all of the great people, all the great programs that are happening at Chamberlain High School. Our guest today, as you can see, is Jason Lane. Jason teaches exercise science at Chamberlain. Upon graduation or completion of the program, the students can certify as personal trainers with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Jason is also entering his 6th season. How'd that go by so fast, Jason? His 6th season as head coach at Chamberlain. Before we get into anything into the interview, I just wanted to take care of a couple of housekeeping matters. If you will bear with me for just 1 second. So first, everyone is in the silent mode. I do that because we get a lot of sirens in the background and everything else. So I want to block out all of those background noises. If you have a question, in the little panel to the side of your screen, you'll see it says chat. Just feel free to type your question in that little chat box. I'll be asking Jason all of the questions at the end of the interview. I'm recording this interview because we live in an on-demand world. We watch Netflix so that we can watch a TV show when we want to watch it. Well, even though I said we were going to start this at 7 o'clock, I know that some people are going to want to watch this next Tuesday. So I am recording it. If you want to share that, all of you will be getting a link to the recording who registered for this. But if you'd like to share the interview, feel free. But you will be receiving a link. Okay, Jason, are you ready for this?
Yep, I'm ready.
You're in the hot seat.
Yep, I want to start by thanking you for the opportunity. You are certainly a community builder, and you do so by making connections. And that has been, just a joy for me. Never felt alone since I've been a part of our community. And if communities don't have people that are making connections, they tend to fall apart. So I greatly appreciate you, Terry.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Jason. I love you like a brother. So here we go. The first thing I want to learn is about your life journey, because what happens to us in life is what shapes us into who we are. I know that you grew up in Indiana because I could see Indiana State football on your shirt.
Yes, sir. Go Sycamores.
I want you to take me back to the cornfield where you and your friends used to play pickup football, and give me some highlights from that point up to today. Just some highlights that those markers in life that made you who you were. And the question I've got is, in those pickup games, were you the captain? Were you the first pick to play, or were you the one that everybody waited to last to pick?
I didn't start playing football until 8th grade. I was scared. I was still trying to find my way in the community. It's a very small town. It's not a very diverse town at all. But on the same note, I received a great education, and I learned a lot about life right there in that community. I learned how to work with all kinds of people, which was a skill I took with me. I wouldn't call myself a captain in my early stages. I don't think football became an absolute for me until my sophomore year. I think I was just using it to fit some social needs, if you will. But I definitely began to grow in leadership thereafter as it pertained to football.
So after high school, did you get a big D1 scholarship, or what happened?
Well, I went to Clinton Central High School. Go Bulldogs. We were a 1A, a very small football team, a very small school, very small football team in terms of numbers, but we worked very hard. I learned discipline there, and through learning discipline, again, in the game of football, starting at the high school level. I was awarded a scholarship to Indiana State University. I don't, our school, Clinton Central, wasn't a popular school for recruits. So it was definitely a blessing. I think they discovered me while they were recruiting another player at Lafayette Central Catholic. The first connection took place.
Great. And then, so you played, did you play 4 years, 3 years, injuries?
Yeah, good question. So I was redshirted my freshman year, which is the best thing for me because I left one culture and jumped right into another. And again, had a lot to figure out about life. So I was redshirted, best thing for me, gave me a chance to mature, gave me a chance to establish some routines in my life so that I could be successful. I played as a backup my second year. My redshirt freshman year, played behind two running backs that were both pretty darn good. They were transfers from Navy and Air Force, respectively. And then that third year, I guess, is when the trouble started for me. I was excited. My coaches were excited about my progress. Had a great spring. Headed into the fall as our starter at tailback, and we were in a inter squad scrimmage the first week before we were to travel and play Kansas State, and a blitzing cornerback hit me kind of up underneath my shoulder pads and shattered my AC joint. So I didn't play. That was like an 8-month recovery. Didn't play at all that season. Came back the following spring, and again was earning my job back. I mean, I was excited about being back, and I was getting positive feedback from my coaches. And in that spring, I tore my Liz Frank ligament in my right foot. So I literally experienced 2 season-ending injuries in a row, and haphazardly that propelled me into coaching. So that was kind of a rundown of my college career.
That's great. I'm gonna pause for a second, and I want to ask the audience, just anybody in the audience, in the chat box, can just somebody tell me if you can see our video, Jason and I on the video camera. Just put "we can see you" in the chat box if you wouldn't mind. Down in the lower right corner. Anybody respond?
I can chat if you want, Terry.
Oh, great. Okay, good. We got it. Thank you for doing that. So after college, did you major in exercise science, or what did you major in?
No, actually, I thought I was going to be a sport agent, and I majored in sport management with a minor in business administration.
Okay, perfect, perfect. I'm going to turn off my presentation so that our pictures, I think, should look bigger when I do this. So after college, what did you do?
Well, my final year, I was on scholarship. So you don't lose your scholarship upon injury. You get put on a medical, and at that point, you're going to be guided in a direction to help serve the team. So I worked in the academic services office. Miss Kathy Baker, she was awesome. She was a mentor for me. And then I also helped run the scoreboard at Indiana State that season, that spring specifically. And then Steve Englehart was he was the head coach at Florida Tech, which just dissolved their program. But he was the offensive coordinator at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute, Indiana. So he knew that I was finishing my senior year and that I was on medical and that I was unable to play that fall. So he offered me a coaching position. It was going to be a GA, and I was going to coach running backs. So I jumped on the opportunity. I didn't necessarily start my master's program at that time because I was finishing my bachelor's while coaching college football. It was Division III university, well-funded, tremendous experience.
That's great. And someplace along there, you met the woman of your dreams, I know.
Yeah. that actually that'll probably fall on the negative end of my continuum we're going to discuss here. But yeah, I went to a homecoming party at Indiana University, and I met my wife there. And here we are, 14 years later of being married. We got married in 2006. And our relationship survived all my immature, troublesome ways as a young man.
My mother always used to say a bad thing is a good thing when it leads to the best thing. So what
Good.
you went through served you well, because she's amazing and your girls are spectacular. You guys have done a great parenting job. Let me get into some of the nitty gritty here that I'm sure a lot of people would like to hear about. You had your own business, but you left it to coach. Of
Yeah.
all the things that you could have done with your life, what were you thinking? Why coaching?
Well, my business was in strength and conditioning, and it afforded me tremendous opportunities to work with a broad range of athletes. And man, in Tampa, they're built a little bit different than the Midwest where I was from. So, even though I was running my own business, it was a lot of, one of my clients that just completely influenced me was Ellis Wims. He played for the Bucks. He was a Super Bowl champ. Most recently I've been working with Ramik Wilson. There's a long list of others I don't want to, run through, but the point is I was still in athletics. I was still coaching and providing guidance in athletics. And there's something about competition that drives men. And we as individuals are driven by connection. I don't think anybody can argue that otherwise. No one prefers isolation unless they've had an experience, typically that was traumatic. So I just kind of always had a desire to be a part of a team. I coached high school football all the while I was developing that business as an assistant, and kind of became disgruntled in my career in public education, which occurs at times. So I took my own advice and went back to college, to Indiana, or to Tampa, University of Tampa, to get my master's degree in exercise science and nutrition. And I was all the way out. I was just going to run that business. I was having fun and starting something that was my own. And then that coaching opportunity at Chamberlain arose. That's the kind of community that I think I'm built to serve. And I think that you speak on competition and how it drives us. In football, you see coaches that do it for their ego, and then you see coaches that do it for the love, hence the connection drive. And I feel like in this game, so many people helped guide a young man who was lost like myself, and it's rewarding to do the same, and it also is fulfilling because I'm still getting a chance to compete, and that keeps me young, I guess.
So I'm going to turn the screen back on because I have a PowerPoint slide here that kind of explains your philosophy. And for those of you who have a video in front of this, you can kind of move that anywhere you want to get it out of the way. But you've got this secret to life that you apply to everything, from raising your own children to raising other people's kids, which you inherited when you became a coach, about how many boys? Can you kind of walk us through this success secret that kind of guides you?
Yeah, so when you and I first met, I think you wanted to discuss my coaching philosophy, and I went up to the board and drew this thing that looks like crosshairs in a sniper rifle or something, but it's a continuum, and I think it's easy to if I'm working with a client in a personal training atmosphere, strength conditioning, whatever it is, they're going to set goals. I'm going to set goals for them. And the bottom line is they're gonna reach their goals with self-discipline and restraint. And in most of our trying moments in life, we either choose that which is most comfortable. I refer to as pleasure seeking. You do what feels good, or you take the easy way out of the shortcut, or you stay true to your values, which requires discipline. So, you know, from left to right, that's how the continuum works. I'll ask a young man straight up, you know, whatever it is, like I said, if it's a goal for weight loss or weight gain, or if it's a goal to be competitive in a sport, you know, place yourself on that continuum. Right? Do you think that you make more disciplined decisions in the moments of your day, or do you think that you seek pleasure and an easy way out? And be honest with yourself. You know, and they can everybody can plot themselves on this thing, you know. And then we start talking about how they spend their time. You know, I think so many raising kids. I mean, kids just want to float. I mean, they love free play. They love free time, and it's a requirement. It's a necessity. But it's something that if it's your focus, you lose. You're not making progress towards your goals. If you're spending your time, you know, in a free, thoughtless, enjoyable environment all the time, you're not going to be making disciplined decisions. So we talk about how much time are you committing each day to your goal. You know, and I'll ask them again, use those crosshairs there, and you know, hey, I'm spending a ton of committed time. Like, coach, I'm tracking my food, I'm tracking my exercise, I'm checking my grades daily. You know, I'm checking it with my teachers, or again, you know, from my personal training experience, you know, I mentioned, are you being honest with tracking your food? Are you doing the program as designed? You know, are you being open and honest? You know, about what you're doing. So I like to have them plot themselves in my coaching philosophy on that continuum. And then I try to teach what each quadrant would represent. So I think when it comes to academic / athletic training, you're going to spend committed time in a discipline, or you could say it like you're going to spend committed time disciplining yourself. That's training. That's studying. You know, that's anything that we want to do, or anything that's goal oriented will be found in that quadrant. I feel like for me, I'm kind of in that area on the other side of discipline, where this is discipline. It's a discipline that I'm practicing, but man, I feel oftentimes like coaching, training, etc. is free time. You know what I mean? And that's why I put joy down in that quadrant. Like,
Yeah.
you're disciplined. You're practicing a discipline, and your behaviors are disciplined, but it's in doing something that you love, that you enjoy. And that's you know, for young people, and for those who are trying to reach any goal that they've set for themselves, you're going to spend time in training so that you can prepare for the joy. I think about the bottom left-hand corner quadrant, where you see it's written stagnant. Oftentimes, I think those are people that are misguided, and often don't self-reflect and aren't completely honest with themselves, and tend to blame others and make excuses for their position, whatever the topic. You know, when you're taking the easy way out, or constantly pleasure seeking, doing things that feel good, and you're all about just hanging out. You know, I didn't want to be the kind of guy that worked his ass off, you know, just to hang out on the weekend. You know, and I think that's something we all go through in the beginning, is the whole work hard, play hard thing, and it's just not what it's got to be. It's something that's kind of fluid, and I think when you spend too much time looking for that easy way out, or doing what feels good, seeking free time, you're stagnant. You don't move. You know, families don't move. And I think about my own upbringing, and sometimes I was just committed to pleasure seeking. I mean, knowing that it's the wrong thing to do. You know, I deal with that when we're doing behavior change and habits. You know, and then it becomes a risk for reward. You know, you're living in that quadrant that is all risk versus reward. You know, I guess if you choose to be a criminal, that's high risk, high reward. You know, I think about some of the vices that we experience as people on this earth. Like, those are high risk, high reward. So I think though it's a great way to teach some of life's toughest lessons, by allowing people to use a continuum, use a chart, and throw themselves up there every once in a while. I'll check with my kids and be like, where do you think you at? You know, So it's just something I use, and it helps me teach a lesson.
That's great. And the kids buy into it.
Yeah, they get it. I mean, how can you not? I think I've never sat down and said, "Hey, what do you think of this continuum?" And somebody's been like, "No, it's trash. I don't like it." Most of the time, people are like, "Wow, okay, I guess I didn't think of it that way."
Yeah.
I don't know where I got it. I don't want to take full credit. I probably happened upon it through all the mistakes I made.
Just chalk it up to brilliance. So I've got another question for you. I have a lot of friends whose kids play football at area high schools, and they'll often put pictures of their kids lifting these barbells with what looks like a gazillion pounds on it. To me, I don't know if that's good for them, bad for them, or indifferent, because I don't know what you know about exercise science and everything else. So the question I've got is, when you get, let's say, a kid coming in from 9th grade, 10th grade, scrawny kid. I played quarterback at 155 pounds in high school, and I never lifted a weight in my life at that point. But how do you guide these kids so that they don't peak too early, don't injure themselves? I mean, is there a methodology? Is there a process? I have no clue.
Yeah, without question. And I want to be careful not to just throw. I don't want it to look at it from an athlete only perspective.
Let me stop you then, because I'll give you another example. My daughter's a performer. She is a singer, and growing up, we would never let her belt. You see these little kids that sound like they're screaming on pitch, and everybody loves it because they're so loud and they clap. But by the time they hit high school, their voice is shot because they stripped all their gears. So
Right.
that's kind of a non-athletic version of the question I'm asking you.
And there's definitely a correlation there. Like I said, I mean, I'd like to speak generally. I think all people should be athletes. It's not about playing a sport. It's about a pursuit, if you will. My own children, we started lifting weights at 7 years old because that's when I thought that they were able to be engaged enough to learn proper movement patterns. So both my ladies started lifting weights at 7, and none of them are ever going to play down in football. It starts with just general movement pattern proficiency. I think you got to educate yourself as a coach. One of the best texts I read, instead of following all the fitness gurus online, was The Essentials of Strength Conditioning. The NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association, that's their primary text for certification. So I recommend reading that because you learn quite a bit about anatomy and adaptation. I think to keep it general and to be helpful for anybody that's trying to determine how you train a beginner, I think that you focus on volume. That's something that people don't, you don't hear people talk about quite a bit. But I would say, the novice should be lifting between 800 and 1,000 reps per month. And you're going to break all of those repetitions down in the foundational movement patterns. I use Al Miller as a strength coach I followed in the past. So I think he was a foundation in terms of study for me, but I've branched a little bit off and kind of done my own thing, especially working with young people. My own kids, like I said, as an example. But I would divide 800 to 1,000 reps across squat, power movements, pressing movements, bench press, incline, military, not leg press. You don't lay down in sports, so you probably shouldn't lay down in a gym. Pulls, and your pulls like clean pulls, snatch pulls, deadlift can be found between pulls and posterior chain. I think you got to spend a lot of time doing single leg and dumbbell lifts with young people and novices, people that are learning. And I think you got to spend time isolating joints. So if you look at it from a big picture and say, all right, these are all the things I need to consider, and I've only got 800 reps to do it, well, then now you can plan out how you're going to spend your time each day. And that way the kids, when you're planning it out over the course of a month, they're never just getting loaded up with weight. I grew up doing bigger, faster, stronger. We do 3 sets of 10, then 4 sets 8, and that's typically referred to as linear periodization. Whereas I think what is safer for everybody is an undulating model where volume increases and then it decreases. Intensity is always fluid as well. So I think in the beginning, you got to get people in shape. So a linear method would be good in the beginning. But after that, once they establish movement patterns and they're in general physical preparedness state, you can then start undulating. Biggest mistake I made in my own training is I felt like growing up that I had to go in there and outwork everybody. You talk about having all that weight on your on your back or whatever on the bar. I think I've gone too hard and not given myself enough time for rest and rehabilitation in my own training. So learning an undulating model where you just get with whoever the client, the kid, whoever it is, and say, all right, hey, this is the 3rd week. We're going to back off in terms of volume. We're going to back off in terms of intensity. And we're going to focus all movement patterns, bar speed, just general technique. And then you can amp it back up, So in my career in coaching, I've had 6, I think, 500-pound plus squatters in the high school age group. Through all my years of coaching. One of them was very recently, but that doesn't happen too frequently. I've had quite a few 400-pound squatters. I think coaches need to realize risk versus reward in the weight room. You're stimulating a response. You don't have to beat the body up to do it. So we take pride in our weight room and everything we do in my home, in my coaching, and in my classes. And if I can't plan it out and look at it from a month-long perspective and see where my reps are going and what intensities they're going to be at, then I shouldn't be doing it. Then we're just kind of blindly putting weight on a bar.
And this is the same process you use even if you're coaching NFL players or training them, I should say.
We're all the same. I'll never get into a debate about what lifts are good for what X. There's rationale behind every argument. I like dumbbells more with baseball players. Tall people front squat better than they back squat. I mean, there's some general things you're going to learn along the way in terms of safety, but all of it fall within this model. And there's so many different models. Be a lifelong learner. I mean, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Well, I've been practicing my leg lifts on my recliner.
That's going to take a while. I mean,
I want to move into college recruiting. I love watching the Super Bowl players kiss the Lombardi Trophy, because if you really stop and think about it, that kiss really started years earlier on some youth football field with this dream that they were going to someday be an NFL star. Then they played high school football with a dream of playing at the college level. Can you give some insights? And I think we've got some college coaches actually on our webinar. Can you give me some insights into what it takes to make it to that college level, and maybe what college recruiters are looking for?
Well, I think that the number one question I field is about character. And I think that a lot of the answers regarding character are going to be found in academics. So many kids start playing football because they think they're going to play in the NFL, and everybody in the family thinks they're going to play in the NFL and all this other stuff, and that's the number one goal, is to play in the NFL. And I guess one thing that humbled me in coaching is that I've been blessed to work with this guy recently named Keith Newman, who played 8 years in the NFL. Tremendous coach, tremendous guy. I met him at a boys club or a rec facility over in the Sulphur Springs community. And it's interesting. After playing in the NFL, he's right back to the type of development required to play in the NFL. It's all about him becoming a better version of himself every day. And learn new things and serving others. Same thing with Ramik Wilson, who I'm still blessed to work with. It's like everybody can see the end coming, and then it all comes right back down to that continuum. So I think one that all parties need to realize that there's a genetic influence in who's going to play in the NFL. And outside of the genetic influence on your ability to make your dream a reality is your character and how you spend each minute of each day. So I think if a young man who has a dream to play in the NFL handles himself as a business at all times, because the number one killer of football careers is personal life. I think if he can learn at a young age how to make decisions that are goal oriented, that's why I use that continuum, and he's constantly reflecting on the quality of his character, I think you're setting him up for success. I've met so many famous strength coaches that just had all my full respect. I remember being just enthralled by what Tom Shaw had done out of Orlando. And the more I learn about these guys, it comes down to simple things that are done in a routine fashion. I think from a parent's perspective and a coach's perspective, you can learn how much a young man is willing to sacrifice for the preparation required to play football based on how he handles his academics. Everybody likes the fun part of football. Everybody loves playing the game. Shoot, that's that joy. That's that disciplined free time. You know what I mean? But you're going to spend all your time preparing for that moment of joy in training, which is committed and disciplined time. And there's no getting around that. There's no getting around that. I can't say it enough. Typically when I see those young men that are driven in the classroom, they're also great at preparation. They also have a sense of humility. They're intrinsically motivated. And then when you see the ones that are special, they usually have genetic potential to get it done. You're going to be abnormal or excellent outside the norm if you're going to play on that stage, and if you weren't gifted with 6'4", height and long arms, and if you can't run a 4.4, 4.3, legitimately on a laser timer, not a hand timer conversation. Like if you can't do some of these things that require genetic potential, then you've got to make yourself an asset to a program in another way. Everybody dreams to be a star, but the reality is you're only going to make it in this business if you personally make a team better. I've been around a lot of great athletes that weren't humble enough to continue to constantly exercise growth, and it got in their way of making a team better. I've also been around water boys who helped us win state championships. It sounds funny, but the longer you stay in the game, you realize that a lot of these things I'm talking about are very true.
Thank you for answering that. And you kind of touched on it, but we have some parents on this webinar who would love their student to get a college scholarship. What one word of advice would you give them to give to their student?
Man, sit down somewhere and get off your phone. During this pandemic, we had to keep working as teachers. And one of the things that I kind of shocked me is I wanted the students in my classes to create their own personal schedule. And when I started getting some responses about what an individual's personal schedule looked like, man, it really helped me kind of understand what some of the kids were going through at home. You have to set a routine, and academics truly have to be the focus. Man, I'm so blessed to be a part of the Chamberlain community, and you know, in Hillsborough County, there's so many schools that have unbelievable athletes, and I mean unbelievable athletes. But if they're not willing to leave some of the aspects of life alone, you know, again, reflecting back on that pleasure seeking model, you know, and that free time, that quadrant there, if they're not willing to make some sacrifices in that area of their life, they're never going to make it in the NFL. I've been around some great athletes that have been blessed to have an opportunity to play professionally, and they've squandered it. So, and these kids got to focus on their grades. I mean, point blank, period. Just if you get all A's and B's, you go to class every day, and you have structured time for study, whether it's a requirement by you know, a program, or whether it's a requirement in your home, or if it's something that you intrinsically can do for yourself. You know, that's the key. You know, not everybody's going to get a D1 scholarship, and that's the only full ride. Outside of that, you're going to be making ends meet and matching numbers up based on a sliding scale and academic performance. There will be no concessions. If you don't qualify, you don't qualify. So the hands down number one way to ensure that your son is going to have an opportunity to play is that dude has A's and B's, and is willing to be real and open with his parents and his coaches about the temptations that he faces in his life. Those are the biggest pieces of advice I have.
I've heard you talk about the student athlete, not the athlete student.
Very much so. I mean, that's in the end, that's the ticket. I'm coaching a kid right now that's one of the best players I've ever been around that still isn't qualified, and it's heartbreaking, you know. And there's still some resistance on accepting that deficiency, you know, which is where he needs to be humble.
I'm going to ask Jason one more question. I know that there are some questions that have already popped up. So I'm going to ask you one more question. If you have questions, go ahead and type them into the box and we'll ask them, and maybe those questions will spur a couple of other questions. We've got about, we've been 38 minutes out of 45, but we can go a minute over if we have to. Jason, can you give me 3 behavioral attributes that you see in every top performer? 3 behavioral attributes that you kind of, I mean, when you see somebody with this attribute, you kind of sit up and take notice.
Intrinsic motivation, those that seek me out for support and advice, and are actively working with their entire school community. Intrinsically motivated. They have restraint. You know, part of growing up is learning to manage your impulses. So learning one way or another how to exercise restraint, that's discipline, if you will. Those are some of your greatest athletes. Third thing, and some of our best players, I mean, you know, you got to be a servant. You got to be a servant. You know, you have to be a servant. You know, there's got to be a sense of humility about you. You know, again, your goal is to make a team better. So those are 3 things I mean, because servanthood is leadership. It's hard to ask everybody to be vocal, but you can definitely see service.
Perfect. I appreciate those answers. I'm going to shift over to the questions that have come up. Now, before I ask any questions, one of the things that I've got to be careful of, Jason and I are walking a little bit of a tightrope because he really can't talk about his program specifically because of potential recruiting violations. We have had this webinar endorsed by the head of athletics at both the school level and in the county level, because I don't want Jason to get into any kind of recruiting violations. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. This one is really easy. It's from Coach Fenley. The coach wants to know when you're going to be coming back to visit Indiana.
I visit every summer. This summer is obviously uncertain. You know, I always try to visit in July prior to our season kicking off. I don't have a ticket this year, obviously, with all this going on, but providing that, you know, we keep seeing progression in the right direction while following these guidelines, I'd still like to visit this summer. You know, my mom passed away in 15, but I still try to visit my stepdad. I still have a friend, you know, in Mike Gilbert. I played high school football with him and college football with him, so I still visit him, and occasionally I run into others. But I'd like to come back in the summer, and if I don't make it this summer, then I'll probably visit in the winter. Because if I don't see my stepdad, he's already an angry old man.
Coach Bentley asks another question, but I can't ask it because it specifically has to do with your program, and I don't want to jeopardize any recruiting rules that we have. Do any of the others of you have any questions that you would like me to ask Coach Lane for you on your behalf? We've covered a lot of territory tonight, didn't we?
Yeah, I think you did a great job. Follow the rules, and I'm just trying to make connections, trying to help grow this community. That's the job of a football program. So,
yeah,
coach, that's what you do. You connect people.
It's really important. Before I close, I want to share with you some upcoming opportunities to learn more about Chamberlain and our programs by doing this Chief Chat. Our next guest will be Jody Woods. She is the assistant principal of athletics at Chamberlain High School. We're going to be talking to her about all athletics because we have 8th graders moving up and into the school, and they want to know what they need to do and when they need to do it and all of those good things. So Jody will be answering all of those questions. I also have Captain Mike Bradford. Chamberlain High School boasts of the Marine Corps Junior ROTC. It is a 5-time honor program. They are the kids that are coming out of that program are unbelievable. I think it's about a third of Chamberlain High School are in the ROTC. I'm looking at a list that he gave me today, and just so that you know, the average GPA of the kids who graduated this year was 3.678. 3.678. And out of all those kids, about 30 of them have already deployed to the Marines, the Navy, the Army, and to other branches, and to military colleges. So we're really proud of how that program shapes the students at Chamberlain High School. And then this year, for the first time, we are launching in the next school year the Chamberlain High School Junior Achievement 3DE program. It's basically an entrepreneurship academy within the school. And I will have a couple of people who represent that program. That is one of the most exciting things that I've seen in years. So you'll be hearing more about that, but keep watching your social media. We will be posting when those are happening on all of our social media. But I want to thank you, Coach Lane, for spending time this evening. And I don't know what the future looks like with this COVID and football practice. I know that you're up in the air a little bit about it right now. But I know that the kids are kind of chomping at the bit to just, I mean, in every school, chomping at the bit to go out there and have some fun on the field. But thank you for what you're doing for our kids. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Well, and thank all of you for joining up with us, and you'll be getting a recording of this this webinar. You all have a great evening, and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Terry.